Narrator, calm but eerie tone. It's late. The streets outside are quiet, maybe a little too quiet. The world has gone to sleep. Your home feels safe, warm lights glowing inside, doors locked, curtains pulled shut. But then you hear it. A sound. A knock. A crunch of gravel. Or maybe it's just that uneasy feeling in your chest that tells you you're not alone. Someone is outside. And that's one of the oldest, most primal fears we have, isn't it? We can handle scary movies, we can laugh off ghost stories, but the idea of a real person standing just beyond our walls, watching, waiting, that gets under your skin in a way nothing else can. Think about it. Inside, you feel protected. But outside, that's the unknown. That's where danger lurks. And when that boundary, the window glass, the locked door, feels like the only thing separating you from whoever is out there, it's terrifying. Tonight, we're diving into 3 very real stories. 3 true accounts of ordinary people who realized, sometimes too late, that someone was standing outside, in the shadows, with intentions no one could fully understand. In the first story, a college student hears knocking on the door late at night. First, it seems like a prank. But as the knocking continues, and shadows move across the windows, the truth becomes far more unsettling. In the second story, a young mother sees a figure in her backyard, silent, unmoving, watching her every move. What starts as a quiet unease quickly turns into a nightmare of rattling doorknobs and muddy handprints on her windows. And in the third, a group of friends notices a car parked outside their house. The headlights are off, the engine silent. But it doesn't leave. And when they finally see the man standing outside of it, staring straight at them, they realize the danger has been there all along. 3 different nights. 3 different people. But the same chilling question. What would you do if you realized someone was right outside, watching you? Before we step into these stories, let me say this. If you love hearing true horror stories just like these, the ones that crawl under your skin and make you double-check your locks tonight, make sure you hit that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow, and it makes sure you never miss the next nightmare I bring straight to your screen. Because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. And I want you to imagine something as we go through these stories. Picture yourself in their place. Home alone at night. The silence broken only by a sound that shouldn't be there. Do you investigate? Do you stay hidden? Do you call for help? Or do you convince yourself it's nothing, until it's too late? I'll warn you now. Some of these stories don't have happy endings. And some of the details might stick with you long after the video ends. But that's what makes them real. These aren't campfire tales. These are real moments told by real people who still don't know why they were being watched, or what could have happened if they made the wrong choice. So, if you're ready, settle in. Turn the lights down. Maybe pull the curtains shut, just in case. And remember to keep listening all the way through, because each story is more disturbing than the last. Narrator, low, steady tone. Our first story comes from a college student. We'll call her Emily. She was 20 years old, living off campus in a quiet suburban neighborhood. It wasn't the kind of place where bad things happened. The houses all looked the same. Neat lawns, Christmas lights still lingering on porches from December. It was safe, familiar, or so she thought. It was a winter night, cold enough that the streets were empty, the kind of night where even the air felt brittle. Emily had stayed home alone to study for an exam. Her roommates were gone for the weekend, and she was actually enjoying the solitude. Just her books, and the low hum of the heater keeping her cozy inside. It was around midnight when it happened. First, she thought she imagined it. A sound, light, deliberate, almost polite. Knock, knock. 2 taps against the front door. Her head lifted from her notes. She froze. It wasn't loud. It wasn't frantic. It was careful. She waited, listening. Nothing. Now, Emily was the type to rationalize. Maybe it was the wind knocking a branch against the porch. Maybe one of her roommates had come home early. But then, knock, knock. The same 2 taps. Soft. Intentional. This time, her stomach dropped. Because she knew what her porch looked like. Bare. No trees, no loose shutters. Nothing that could make that sound by accident. She stood slowly, every creak of the floorboards feeling like it echoed too loud in the empty house. Her heart was pounding, but curiosity, just a little stronger than fear, pulled her toward the door. Sound. Faint heartbeat. Rising. She pressed her eye to the peephole. No one. Her porch light was on, the snow glowing under the bulb. The steps were empty. The street beyond was quiet. Emily stepped back, pulse still hammering. Maybe she really was imagining it. She laughed nervously at herself, shook her head, tried to brush it off. But then, 5 minutes later, knock, knock. Her blood turned cold. The same sound, the same measured rhythm. This time she didn't move. She sat frozen at her desk, listening. Her eyes darted to the door, then to the window. The blinds were down, but she swore she saw movement on the other side. She gathered her courage, crept toward the door again, and checked the peephole. Still nothing. Empty porch. Silent street. Now fear was overtaking curiosity. Her rational mind was spinning excuses. Maybe kids playing pranks? Maybe neighbors? But deep down, something about that knocking felt wrong. Too deliberate. Too patient. She backed away, sat on the couch, tried to focus on her phone. Sound. Phone buzzing faintly, then silence again. That's when she saw it. Out of the corner of her eye, in the gap between the blinds, movement. A shadow sliding across the window. She held her breath. Slowly, carefully, she turned her head toward the blinds. The shadow was gone. Her hands were shaking as she grabbed her phone and dialed 911. Her voice trembled as she explained. There's someone outside my house. They keep knocking. They're moving around. The operator's calm voice steadied her. Help was on the way. Stay inside. Don't open the door. Keep the phone with you. 10 minutes. That's how long it took. But 10 minutes, when you're alone in a house with someone circling outside, feels like forever. The knocking didn't come again. Instead, there were footsteps, crunching in the snow, around the side of the house. Slow, deliberate. Emily held her breath, clutching the phone, every muscle in her body tense. She wanted to scream. She wanted to hide. She wanted to disappear. Then headlights washed across the street. A police car pulled up, tires crunching against the curb. Relief hit her so hard she almost cried. She opened the door just a crack when the officer approached, explaining through trembling lips what had happened. The officer's face hardened as he swept the flashlight across her porch, then into the snow. That's when they saw them. Footprints. Clear, heavy prints in the fresh snow, leading from the street to her porch, then looping around her house, to the windows, to the back door, around again, over and over. Emily's stomach flipped. Whoever it was hadn't just knocked and left. They had been circling, watching, testing every angle. The officer followed the prints around the side of the house, Emily trailing behind at a safe distance. The footprints wound in slow, deliberate loops around her property, circling the walls, doubling back. And then, they led into the woods. The beam of the flashlight cut through the trees, but the tracks disappeared into the dark. The officer radioed for backup, but the truth was clear. Whoever had been there was gone. The worst part? The officer turned back to Emily and said something that chilled her even more than the knocking. They weren't trying to get in. Not yet. They had just been watching. Emily didn't sleep that night. She didn't sleep much for weeks after. Every creak of the house made her jump. Every flicker of movement outside her window turned her blood to ice. And the police? They never caught anyone. The footprints vanished in the woods, and no suspects were ever found. So to this day, Emily doesn't know who was outside her house that night, or why. She only knows one thing for sure. They never found who it was, or why they were waiting outside. Narrator: low, steady tone. Our next story comes from a young mother. We'll call her Sarah. At the time, she lived in a small rural house with her 2-year-old son. Her husband often worked night shifts, which meant Sarah spent many evenings alone, just her and her toddler in that quiet little home. The house itself sat on the edge of a wooded lot. Out front, a long gravel driveway led to the road. Out back, a wide yard stretched into the treeline, a place where her son's toys were scattered. A plastic slide, a sandbox, and a swing set that swayed when the wind picked up. Sarah had always found comfort in the stillness. The nights were peaceful, the stars bright, but one evening that peace shattered. It was just after dusk. Sarah had tucked her little boy into bed, then settled into the living room with a blanket and a book. The house was silent, save for the faint hum of the baby monitor. And then she heard it. Crunch. The unmistakable sound of footsteps on gravel. Her head shot up. The book slid from her hands. She held her breath, listening. At first, she told herself it must have been an animal. A stray dog, maybe, or a deer crossing the yard. But then another crunch. Steady, heavy, human. Her heart began to pound. Slowly, carefully, she rose and peeked through the curtain toward the backyard. That's when she saw him. At the edge of the trees, half in shadow, a man stood. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. Her skin prickled as fear surged through her chest. The man wasn't close, not yet, but the way he stood there, so still, so deliberate, made her feel like prey being sized up. She stepped back quickly, pulling the curtain shut, every instinct screaming at her to lock the doors. She moved from door to door, sliding bolts, twisting locks, checking windows twice over. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped her phone once, scrambling to pick it up. For the next half hour, she tried to convince herself it was nothing. Maybe it was a hunter who had wandered too far from his land. Maybe a neighbor, someone lost, someone harmless. But the unease in her gut refused to settle. And then, as the night deepened, the noises began. Sound. Rattle of metal doorknob, slow and deliberate. The back door handle jiggled. Once, twice, a steady rattle like someone testing it. Sarah's blood ran cold. She grabbed her son from his crib, clutching him tightly, and retreated to the bedroom, locking that door too. For minutes that felt like hours, she listened. Footsteps, the faint crunch of gravel shifting, the sound of someone circling her home. Then tap, a soft sound against the window glass. She froze. Her son whimpered in her arms, sensing her fear. She pressed her hand over his back, whispering, "Shoo, it's okay. It's okay." Though she knew it wasn't. The tapping came again, this time louder. Then the sliding of a palm against the glass, slow, deliberate, as if someone were trying to peer inside. That was enough. Sarah dialed her neighbor, an older man named Tom who lived half a mile down the road. She could barely get the words out through her panic. "Someone's outside my house. Please, please come." Tom told her to stay put and that he'd be there in minutes. So she waited. Every second stretched endlessly. The noises outside moved from door to window, window to wall, like whoever it was circling, searching. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sound stopped. Sound. Silence. Then faint hum of crickets again. Her ears strained for any sign of movement. Nothing. The yard was still. The night was quiet again. By the time Tom pulled into the driveway with his truck lights sweeping across the property, the man was gone. They searched the yard together, flashlights scanning across the grass and toward the treeline. Nothing. Not a trace. Just silence, thick and heavy. Sarah barely slept that night. She sat in the bedroom clutching her son, waiting for dawn. When morning finally came, the truth revealed itself. And it was worse than she imagined. In the daylight, Sarah noticed smears on her windows. Dark, wet streaks. She stepped closer, her stomach knotting tighter with every inch. They weren't smears. They were handprints. Large, muddy handprints, pressed against the glass at eye level. Palm marks, fingers spread wide. On the living room window, the kitchen window, even her son's bedroom window. Her breath caught in her throat. Whoever it was hadn't just been circling. They'd been leaning in, looking inside, watching her child. And then she saw the yard. The toys, her son's plastic truck, his sandbox pail, were scattered differently than before, shifted, moved. And the swing on the old wooden set creaked gently back and forth. Not from the wind, because there wasn't any. The air was perfectly still. Sarah stood frozen, her son clinging to her leg, as that swing moved in a slow, unnatural rhythm. And she realized someone had been there, not just watching, not just testing doors. They had been close enough to touch her windows, close enough to move her child's toys, close enough to sit on that swing. The police were called, of course. Reports were filed. But just like with Emily in our first story, no one was ever caught. And Sarah was left with the memory of those handprints, those shifted toys, and that swing, swaying long after the man in the yard had vanished. Narrator, calm, unsettling tone. Our third and final story comes from a group of friends. 4 teenagers spending a weekend night the way so many of us once did. A sleepover. Pizza boxes scattered on the table, soda cans stacked in the corner, and horror movies playing too loud in the living room. It was supposed to be just another night of staying up late, telling stories, daring each other to watch scary films and not look away. But sometimes, real horror doesn't come from the TV screen. Sometimes, it parks itself right outside your house. The host of the sleepover was a girl named Hannah. She lived on a quiet street in a cul-de-sac. Suburban, safe. The kind of place where neighbors waved when they mowed the lawn and porch lights glowed warmly at night. Around midnight, after their third movie ended, one of the friends, Lena, happened to glance out the front window. And that's when she saw it. A car. It was parked across the street, engine off, lights off, just sitting there. First, she didn't say anything. Could have been nothing. Maybe a neighbor's guest. Maybe someone stopping to check directions. But as the minutes turned into hours, the car didn't move. Every now and then, one of them would peek through the blinds, whispering nervously to the others. "It's still there. Are you sure it wasn't there earlier?" "No, I'd have noticed. It just showed up." They laughed it off, pretending not to care. But the longer it stayed, the more their laughter faded. By 2:30 in the morning, the mood had shifted. The horror movies were turned off. The chatter had died down. And every time headlights appeared on the street, they prayed it would belong to that car, that it would finally drive away. But it never did. And then, 3 a.m. Sound. Clock chime. Low distant hum. One of the girls, Rachel, got up to use the bathroom. On her way back, curiosity got the better of her. She parted the blinds just slightly, eyes darting to the street. Her heart skipped a beat. The car was still there. But this time, the driver's door was open, and standing outside of it was a man. He wasn't moving. He wasn't smoking a cigarette or checking his phone like someone might if they were just parked. He was standing perfectly still, facing the house, watching. Rachel's throat went dry. She backed away from the window, whispering, almost too afraid to say it out loud. "There's a man out there." The room went dead silent. Slowly, all 4 of them crept to the window, pulling the blinds just enough to peek through. And there he was, tall, motionless, a silhouette lit faintly by the streetlight. His head tilted just slightly upward, like he could see right through the glass, straight into their eyes. The girls ducked down instantly, hearts racing, adrenaline flooding their veins. "Call the cops," Hannah hissed, fumbling for her phone. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped it. She dialed 911, whispering frantically to the operator. "There's a man outside. He's just standing there. Please, please send someone." The dispatcher's voice was calm, steady. "Stay inside. Stay quiet. Officers are on the way." But even as she spoke, they could hear it. Sound. Footsteps on gravel. Slow, crunching closer. The man was moving, slowly, toward the house. They ducked lower, barely daring to breathe. Every sound felt amplified, the creak of the floor, the hum of the refrigerator. And then, silence. When they risked a glance, the street was empty. The car door was shut again. The man was gone, or so it seemed. The police arrived minutes later, sweeping the area with flashlights, checking the car's license plate. But as their headlights lit up the cul-de-sac, the mysterious car pulled away, tires rolling silently, disappearing into the night before anyone could stop it. The girls tried to laugh it off afterward, telling themselves it must have been some creep, some lost driver, nothing more. But the image of that man, silent, still, watching, stuck with them. For a while, life went back to normal. They still had sleepovers, still stayed up late. But they always checked the street outside Hannah's house first. And then, weeks later, it happened again. This time, it was just Hannah and Lena. Another late night, another movie marathon. They almost forgot about that night entirely. Until Lena went to take out the trash, glanced toward the street, and froze. There it was. The same car. But this time, it wasn't across the street. It was parked directly in front of Hannah's house. Engine off. Lights off. Just sitting there. The blood drained from Lena's face. She called Hannah to the window, both of them staring in horror as that creeping realization hit. He was back. And he was closer. They didn't wait this time. They called the police immediately. But by the time officers arrived, the car was gone again. Just like before. For months, the girls lived with that gnawing paranoia. Every late-night noise made their skin crawl. Every car that slowed on the street made their stomachs drop. And then, the news broke. A man had been arrested a few towns over. The charges: stalking, attempted abduction, multiple accounts of watching homes late at night, waiting, circling. The description of his car? A match. The color. The make. The same eerie vehicle that had been sitting in the street, lights off, while they peeked out through the blinds. And suddenly, all those nights of unease crystallized into horrifying truth. He hadn't just been lost. He hadn't just been passing through. He had been hunting. Narrator: calm, reflective, unnerving. We've just walked through 3 stories. 3 nights that started like any other, and ended in terror. A college student alone at home. The midnight knock echoing through a quiet suburban house. A young mother, her toddler asleep while a man lingered in the dark of her yard. And a group of friends, laughing, eating junk food, until a silent car across the street turned their sleepover into a waking nightmare. 3 stories, 3 different people, 3 different places. But one thing connects them all. Pause, then quieter tone. Someone was outside. Such a simple idea, almost too simple. We like to think of our homes as fortresses, our 4 walls, our doors, our locks. We draw the curtains, flip the deadbolt, and convince ourselves we're safe. But that's an illusion. Think about it. The only thing separating you from whoever or whatever is outside is just a few inches of wood or maybe a thin sheet of glass. If someone wants to watch you, they can. If someone wants to test your locks, they can. And if someone wants to wait silently, patiently, they can do that too. The midnight knock wasn't just a sound. It was a message. Someone was there. They weren't in a rush. They weren't desperate. They wanted to be heard, and they wanted to see what would happen when the door creaked open. The college student never found out who it was. And that's what makes it terrifying. Because sometimes the unknown is worse than any face you could recognize. The man in the yard, he didn't storm the house, he didn't smash a window. He stood there, watching, waiting, testing. Imagine the courage it takes not to break down in panic when you know someone is circling your home, rattling your doorknobs, brushing their hands across your windows. Imagine knowing your child is asleep in the next room, completely unaware of the danger just beyond the glass. That mother will never forget the muddy handprints. The toys moved, the swing swaying in the dead of morning. Some trespasses don't need words. They leave scars without ever crossing the threshold. And the car outside, the waiting predator in plain sight. Hours passed. The man didn't need to hide in shadows, because sometimes the boldest monsters are the ones who sit patiently where you can see them, daring you to make the first move. How many people saw that car and thought nothing of it? How many neighbors passed by, shrugging it off as normal? But normal doesn't sit outside your house at 3 a.m. Normal doesn't return closer, bolder the second time. And only later did they learn the truth. That man wasn't random. He was hunting. He was preparing. And he almost got away with it. Pause. Voice lowers. Intimate. That's the thread tying these stories together. The reminder that home isn't always safe. Because what's truly frightening isn't the breaking glass or the crash of a door forced open. It's the waiting, the silence, the knowledge that someone is out there, just beyond reach, deciding whether tonight is the night they step inside. Long pause. Let the silence hang. So, what do we do with that knowledge? We double-check our locks. We close the blinds. We convince ourselves it won't happen to us. But the truth? Sometimes the locks don't matter. Sometimes the glass shatters. Sometimes all it takes is one quiet knock, one crunch of gravel, one parked car that doesn't drive away. Soft, almost whisper. And that's what lingers long after the story's end. The thought that maybe, even right now, as you listen to this, someone is standing just outside. Beat, sound, faint tapping, distant wind through trees. Narrator, final chilling line. So tonight, when you hear something outside your window, take a second look. Because maybe, just maybe, someone's out there, watching you.